the decision I made was, why are we going to take less on a commercial job just because it has a larger dollar amount associated with it? It's a $100,000 contract as opposed to the $1,500 contract over here. I'd rather just get a lot more of the smaller, more profitable contracts, and that is what we've done.
Hi, I'm Paul Giannamore. I wanted to welcome our new subscribers to the channel. You know, historically, Potomac TV has been focused on business and operational information and interviews for residential and commercial services business owners. But after the publication of the Sell-Side M&A Masterclass last month, my LinkedIn inbox has been inundated with a variety of different requests. So Dylan and I will be sitting down filming more extensive M&A masterclasses, both focusing on the sell side as well as the buy side. I intend to talk about the choice of process, delving deep into M&A psychology, as well as extensive buy side practice, approach, and due diligence. For those of you who have not subscribed, you can click below and subscribe to the channel. Furthermore, we've provided a link here in the description where you can get on our email distribution list. And if you do that, you'll receive an email right in your inbox with our latest publications. Feel free to put a comment below on the types of things you want to see. I mean, this channel is largely driven by you, the viewer, and what you want to see from us. Again, thanks for joining us here at Potomac TV.
Krisjan, great to see you today. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Appreciate the invitation.
So let's start with the name, your name. Was your mom drunk when she? I mean, what?
Yeah, it throws some people off. It is Latvian. Both my parents are from Latvia.
Gotcha.
A small country on the Baltic Sea. Used to be part of the Soviet Union. Not by choice, but it is a relatively common name in Latvia, believe it or not. But yeah, in the U.S.,
no one can spell it, right?
No. So it's a challenge, and last name is a bit of a challenge too. But you know, it makes things interesting. So,
well, good. So, what are you up to now? You're in the D.C. metro area. Let's talk about your business.
Yeah. In Northern Virginia, D.C. market, we service mostly Fairfax County, Arlington County, some of Prince William County, some of the very fortunate, some of the wealthiest counties per capita in the nation. So, and the density is, again, we're fortunate to be in there. This wasn't part of the business strategy years ago, so fortunate to be in that area. So a fair amount of disposable income for our clients. So although we provide a luxury, essentially, grateful that area can sustain, the luxury that we provide. So residential is our specialty, residential maintenance. We're about 70% residential maintenance, and the rest is design build and a few other, snow occasionally when it does snow, things like that. But we're almost exclusively residential, which is somewhat unique for a company of our size. Most companies that have, scaled are scaling with commercial work. So that is kind of our niche, and it's small residential. We're not typically servicing the big estates. We tend to have much more compact properties, just a high volume of them in close proximity, and that's kind of our wheelhouse.
And so how did you get started in the business?
Probably similar stories to some other business owners out there. So my first job in high school was at Mount Vernon Country Club, and I wasn't a caddy, I was on the grounds crew. So didn't think that would be a training for a career at the time. It was just a fun job and an opportunity to play golf Monday through Thursday. They didn't allow us to play on Fridays, but went to college for 2 years, played football, joined a fraternity, drank a lot of beer, didn't study much, and so after 2 years came home feeling sorry for myself, quite frankly, and having not performed very well at school, and licking my wounds, and the only thing I really knew how to do at the time was grounds maintenance. So I literally took my dad's Craftsman lawnmower and started knocking on doors around the neighborhood and asking if folks needed work done around the yard. I mean, it was literally that basic of a start. Not a business plan. It was really just extra cash was what I was looking for. So yeah, and that was 27 years ago.
And so when you started this, it was just you.
Yes.
And so what was the trajectory of growth? I mean, how long did you do this as a solo operator?
Well, I quickly brought on a friend from high school who was we were buddies. We played football together, and the two of us he grew the business for several years. For the first almost 3 years, it was just the two of us. And eventually became our full-time jobs. But I was bartending and waiting tables to pay the bills. So it was every dime we made went right back into the company. So fast forwarding, I did have a business partner, ended up buying him out a few years later. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. We were business partners for a while in the beginning, and he was an instrumental part of the business. He was more of a numbers guy. I'm really not a numbers guy. I'm more of the people guy, if you will. And so it was a good team for the time that it lasted. But
And how big is your team? How big is your team now?
yeah, we have about 85 employees total. Of that, roughly 60 or so, maybe our production staff, boots on the ground in the field, and then the rest are account managers. Our version of account manager, or our definition of account manager, is it's sales. So it's not as traditional account manager as a lot of landscape companies. They are providing customer service, but their objective is to take those leads that are coming in, bid those leads, and obviously close them or sell them the best they can. But they also handle quite a bit of customer service as well. And then we have a pretty robust client care. I like to say client care. I think customer service has more of an ordinary sort of connotation to it, so we call it client care. Our client care team. In fact, so much so that I've had over the years a few consultants come in and comment, still, gee, what are all these people doing here? There's a lot of people sitting around, not generating revenue, but it is part of our secret sauce is as cliche as it sounds, striving to really optimize that client experience. So, and that is part of what we try and differentiate ourselves. I know there are a lot of companies that claim to do that, and some are very successful. But you have to have, staff, obviously, in order to provide that, so it's not just a bot or a answering machine and all that sort of thing. And obviously, a lot of smaller companies struggle with that immensely. So,
Does each client get a dedicated client care rep?
no, technically no, and that is a little bit different than what a lot of companies do. So our account managers have assigned zip codes. So if you for example, we're on our website, filled out a form, and we're interested in certain maintenance services, and you're in a zip code that, of course, is within our service area, that would immediately be assigned to the corresponding account manager, and then he or she would be the one that starts communicating with you. Now, one thing that we do a little bit differently, too, is we're not actually meeting with the majority of these customers, which sounds a little strange, I think. And I'm not bragging. It's just kind of what works for us. We're in a very urban, suburban area, very densely populated. I think for the most part, many of our clients are very busy, don't have a lot of extra time, and are not, again, this is my take on it, but are not as interested in walking their property for an hour or two with the local landscaper. And so we although it's not as personal on the front end, we're trying to get that information to you very accurately, and it's not from our desk either. We're actually walking your property. Generally, you're not there, or you're not required to be there, and then that estimate's in your inbox within a matter of hours. So
if I did a web form, somebody would contact me, and I'd be off on my day. One of your team members would go over to my place, take a look around, and put together a proposal.
If you filled out a web form, you actually more than likely wouldn't even be contacted. The next thing you would receive is that customized contract in your inbox with, our objective is 24 hours or less. Sometimes it's a lot less. Sometimes it could be a little bit longer, obviously, depending on volume. But so I've had some critics say it can be very impersonal. And I think there's an argument to be made there that, certainly we could theoretically increase our close ratios if it was more personal. But I think there's a happy medium between that and how much time our client or prospective client, in this case, has or is willing to give you. And let's say they're getting 4 or 5 quotes. I mean, I think that's a legitimate assumption. Not that we want to, be a commodity, but do you think they're? I mean, I just don't know if they're willing to meet with 5 different companies for. I mean, that's 5 or 6 hours of their free time. So that's kind of the way we look at it. And then it's much more personal after they're onboarded, and that's our objective. But so
Interesting. And so you started as a pure play maintenance business. Now you do design build as well. Well, how'd you get into that?
yeah, I think probably similar to a lot of folks that are watching this. I maintenance was obviously the low-hanging fruit at the time. It was what I knew how to do. It was my comfort zone. I did not know much about landscaping in the very beginning, and as any small company starts to grow and is having requests from clients about, hey, do you guys, we're looking at a patio. You guys know how to do that? I mean, this was a long time ago, but I remember, thinking, well, we can figure it out. Of course, that's probably not what I said to the client at the time. I said, yeah, sure. So I quickly realized that, I'm not going to be the expert in everything. And it very clearly became, a goal to surround myself at the time and then, the company with experts in certain fields, right? So it sounds obvious, but it's sort of like, okay, how can I bring someone on board that has some expertise in this area so that we can provide the service, as opposed to me being the jack of all trades and master of none, certainly. So
on the maintenance side, of course, you have the recurring revenue aspect of it,
Yeah.
right? Once you sell the client, ideally you keep them in perpetuity. On the design build side, it's a little bit more lumpy. No?
yeah, I agree. I think there are a lot of companies that hang their hat on, or maybe too heavily on design build, and there's some that are phenomenal at it, and they're doing $500,000 projects, and that's their thing, and that is not our thing. We are capable of doing very large projects. We do from time to time. It's really not what we're going after, though. So smaller design build projects, generally, we're on the property a day, several days at maximum, probably in the $15,000 to $30,000 range, I would say, revenue-wise, is kind of our wheelhouse. But we do some phenomenal work, some larger projects. We don't actively seek it as much because I feel like there's a lot of competition there. There are a lot of companies that are going after the big dollar amount, and maybe some that maybe aren't. Their net isn't as attractive on those jobs as they would like for it to be, and so. But about, like I said, 30% of our revenue is design build, and we're comfortable there. That's a healthy place to be, in my opinion, because maintenance, although it's not as sexy, I guess, all the before and afters that people get all excited about, I think a lot of times people get enamored with that and look at this awesome project. We love that. We're very proud of that, but that's really not, at the end of the day, what pays our bills. Maintenance is what pays our bills. Obviously, that recurring revenue is our sweet spot, and so we don't take that for granted. And we don't, I mean, years ago, it's funny. I used to have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I think a lot of landscapers or contractors in general that it certainly started off small, or had mud on their boots, on a Saturday afternoon or what have you. I used to hear from people, "Oh, you cut a lot of grass." Yeah, we do cut a lot of grass. We sure do, and we're not embarrassed to say that. That is a piece of the puzzle. And I would say mowing in general is probably not the most profitable service in the world, but it's a gateway for us to other services that certainly have higher margins. So.
And where do you see more competitive pricing pressure, on the maintenance side or the design build side?
Maintenance, I think so, yeah, because I think it's more. It can be perceived more as a commodity. It's like, oh, anybody can cut grass.
Lower barriers to entry, so to speak, right?
Exactly. So that certainly is the case. Ton of pressure on design build. I will say, though, that is, although we just talked about sort of the somewhat lack of that personal touch in the beginning, which is somewhat intentional on our part. On the maintenance side, the landscape side is very different. Yeah. So it's very personal from the very beginning, and hopefully there's rapport there between a landscape designer and the client. So price, although it's always important, I don't think that, generally speaking, the client isn't as focused on price because it's rarely an apples-to-apples comparison. It's like,
Right.
you know, oh, well, they're cheaper compared to what? And then
Right.
once you start looking at it, it's like, well, here are all the differences, you know. And whereas maintenance, there are differences, but they're not as tangible to the client, I think.
No, that makes perfect sense. You focused on the residential market. Why have you stayed away from commercial or not really developed that thesis so much?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been sort of organic. It's not like we ever had this. There was a time where we would bid commercial projects, mostly on the maintenance side, and we found that we were almost never competitive. And when I say not competitive, I mean like 20, 30% higher than other bidders. And to the point where we were getting feedback from property managers and HOAs, like, why are you guys so much more expensive? And what we came to realize, again, this is years ago, but what we came to realize is that our margins on residential were such that we could not bid those commercial jobs with the same pricing structure. And so the decision I made was, why are we going to take less on a commercial job just because it has a larger dollar amount associated with it? It's a $100,000 contract as opposed to the $1,500 contract over here. I'd rather just get a lot more of the smaller, more profitable contracts, and that is what we've done because we're mainly, as simple as it sounds, we're just never competitive on commercial.
Yep.
And the only commercial that we have are through relationships that we have with homeowners within those HOAs or that and that have had really bad experiences with larger commercial companies that have underbid
Yep.
and then not provided all the services that are maybe listed on the contract with hopes that they're not going to notice. And they've come to us and said, look, we know you guys are more, but it's worth it. You guys service most of our homeowners here, and we've seen what you guys do. But I mean, good luck, scaling that. Those are outliers. So,
Yeah, especially in the markets that you're in, from a competitive perspective on the commercial side, those guys just drive the price down.
yeah, they do. With the goal, of course, being to enhance or upsell later. And I appreciate that objective and that way of doing business. It's not the way I like to have someone do business with me. I'd rather you just be very upfront and say, this is what you need. This is what it's going to cost. And then let me make my decision, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to give you the inferior package here. I'm not going to tell you that. And then, hopefully before you're unhappy, I'm going to say, hey, oh, by the way, these are all the other things you need. And, it's very commonplace in our market, in our industry.
Yeah.
But I don't subscribe to that. I don't like to be treated that way. So, and perhaps we do lose some business because of that, but I'm okay with that.
That's a great way to do it. How have you scaled that business in recent years from maybe an advertising marketing perspective?
Yeah. So I've had people say we're a bit of a unicorn in our, certainly in our market, but in the industry because of the amount of revenue that we do on the small residential side, which is pretty unusual. And so, having people say that and thinking about that, has made me sort of, look back and say, okay, because I can sit here and say, oh, we meant to do this.
This was the
because
plan
I'm
from
so
the beginning.
Brilliant. That's not the case. I mean, there's been we've had some luck as well. And obviously made some good decisions along the way. Not doing commercial, I think, has been a good decision for us. It just didn't fit us. It's a totally different animal and different pricing structure. So, and not doing large residential, we do have some, but it's almost like they're small commercial projects, and we're borderline price-wise. Some folks are willing to pay a little bit more, but there are 10 companies behind us that are willing to do it for less, and some of which probably will do a fine job. But what they're getting per man hour is significantly less than what we need to charge. And so what I've found is that the administrative burden that we have is enormous, because it's roughly 4,000 active maintenance customers within 8 miles of our office, right? It's pretty unusual. So on any given day, any one of those 4,000 customers can email us, call us, text us. So those are just current clients. That's not the prospective landscape customers. So, I mean, imagine as I mentioned, the robust client care team that we have. Well, we have to have that. Otherwise, we're providing inferior service. And there's a cost to that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and if we're baking that cost into what we need to charge, And then a commercial contract is $500,000, and imagine the amount of customers on the small residential side that we need to have in order to generate $500,000 worth of revenue.
Yeah.
A heck of a lot more. Whereas you could have 1 or 2 points of contact on the commercial side, and we could have 500 on the residential side. So it's just not apples to apples. So we just continue to and it's been a sort of street by street, pond ripple sort of organic growth. We've never acquired another company, never bought anyone's customer list. And just as simple as it sounds, route density. I mean, it's, and I think that almost to the point now where people are probably tired of seeing our trucks. It's like, hey, these guys are everywhere. We get that a lot where it's like, I mean, you guys are doing the HOA, right? Well, no. We just handle like 30 houses in the neighborhood. So,
But it sounds like you're the guy that actually understands, you kind of understood route density from the get-go. Like a lot of guys want to grow their fiefdom, they want to make it huge, right?
Yeah.
Like cover this multi-state area.
Right.
And you're like, no, I'm going to do a tiny area and I'm going to own it.
yes.
So you have probably #1 market share on the residential side, I guess, in your very small service area.
Yes. And it is definitely a key to our success and ultimately profitability. Certainly is a big key. You always hear, oh yeah, windshield time, load and unload, and all those sorts of things. That compounds obviously as you have a larger service area. It compounds, and if you're not working that into your price, if you are, you're probably not competitive, and if you're not, it's just basically coming right off the bottom line, right? And so. And then you're spending a heck of a lot more money to market those areas because you're trying to grow those areas, and that's coming right out of the bottom line. So yeah, I mean, we've never done it that way, and never felt like we had to. But I mean, there's some merit to that. I understand that. Maybe with some private equity money where that happens. But yeah, it's all been organic for us.
So save for digital marketing, what are some other marketing things that you do in that finite geography?
Yeah. So we, years ago, the landscape has changed so much from a marketing standpoint. It was, you remember Angie's List? I think they're still around. Angie,
Yeah.
they've rebranded
Right.
as Angie.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm embarrassed, but I'm somewhat embarrassed to say that at our peak, I think we were spending like, I don't know, $75,000 a year just with them. And then tons of direct mail marketing, which is extremely expensive. It can be effective, very expensive. And a ton of Google pay-per-click. This was sort of before we brought on a marketing firm, when I was sort of handling it myself, thought I knew what I was doing. It was working. I just didn't know what was working and how much of it was working, right? So just throwing a bunch of money at it, and yeah, it's working, but maybe we could spend half of that and still do just as well.
Yeah.
So the marketing firm came in, they're terrific, and sort of said, hey, why don't we pump the brakes on all the stuff that you're doing, focus on your branding, focus on, instead of always looking at new customers, adding services to your current customers. These are obvious things, certainly. I'm just talking about in the very beginning where it was maybe not obvious, and now it is very obvious. So we've reduced our marketing budget. It's about a third of what it was at its peak, and last year we had the highest revenue we've ever had. So that's a good trend. Yep. Marketing spend down, revenue and profitability up. I hope we do that every year, but it is working currently.
Do you still do direct mail?
I do, actually, believe it or not. I know it's somewhat antiquated and it is very expensive.
Maybe that's why it works.
I think that it's bigger, bolder, flashier than it used to be. So we go with like full page, in your mailbox, standalone. It's not stuffed in something else or folded into some newspaper. So they're expensive, but we're targeting very specific neighborhoods and very specific clientele, and it's a very captive audience. So instead of sending 10,000 out to 3 zip codes, it would be maybe 1,000 to very, very targeted, very specific clients that we're looking to bring on board. So I question, it's hard to quantify how much what our return on investment is on that. But like anything, marketing, the old adage is how many times does a customer have to see your logo or your brand, and your truck drive by, the mailer that they received, you popping up as a sponsored, on Google pay-per-click. At what point, it all is part of the equation, obviously. So we have,
Considering you're in such a tight geography, have you ever done door-to-door sales?
No, we haven't, and the only reason I can tell you why we haven't is I don't like to do that personally, and I just am not comfortable asking anyone else on my team to do that, do something that I wouldn't really want to do myself. Also looking through the client lens, and it's sort of my unique client lens, which may be a little more skewed than the standard client. I just don't like it when people show up at my door and knock on the door unannounced, and I don't know who they are. I don't like that feeling. I feel like it's a little bit of an invasion of privacy. I know it can be effective. We don't do it because I don't like to be the person that's in the house that's talking to someone that's trying to sell me a roof, and I'm like, "Who are you? What company are you with?" Well, I know you can tell maybe I do need a roof, but I'm just not interested in talking. Of course, now we have a Ring camera, and I don't even answer those. So
yeah, yeah. I got to wonder, in your metro area, do any of your competitors use door-to-door sales?
They probably do.
Yeah.
They probably do. We see it a lot. Obviously, roofing and siding is popular with those businesses. A little bit of HVAC. Pest, I've seen a fair amount of pest. We do some pest, perimeter pests, and exterior. I wouldn't say we're pest control because we don't come in the house, but it's generally the much larger companies that are canvassing, and they're not even the people that are doing it don't even work for the company. They're just
outsourced.
Outsourced. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think that works to an extent, but you talk about commoditizing. That's a commodity. There's no what rapport are you building with that person that's coming to your door that doesn't even work for the company?
Yeah.
None, zero. So it's all price at that point, I would assume. And so I don't know if that's not really the client that we're typically the demographic that we're going after.
So you've made a wise move sticking with your knitting on the residential side. You've got a couple service lines. You are doing some perimeter pest. Have you thought about going deeper into other ancillary services in the future?
Other services in general, or
Meaning
pest
like
specifically?
pest or lawn care or any other?
Yeah. I have. Couple of things that come to mind. We do some landscape lighting, but it's always an enhancement to an existing project that we're working on, right? So if someone's spending $30,000 on a patio, I think it's generally a pretty logical transition for the designer to say, hey, for an extra $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000, we can really take this to the next level, and you can really enjoy this in the evening and not need the floodlights on like you're got a spotlight on you, and that's easy. And most people are like, yeah, heck yeah, let's do that. But we don't market landscape lighting. We're very good at it. There's pretty darn good margin on landscape lighting. I feel like we could do a lot more landscape lighting if we really pushed it. I say push it. If we really let folks know that that's something that we specialize in. That's one. Irrigation is another one.
And would you, on the landscape lighting, then would you do that on a standalone basis when you're not involved in a design build project? You would look and say, hey, this is a lot. This is your, are we going to light up?
I think I can imagine a scenario where we're first of all letting prospective clients know that we do it. I mean, it's on our website, but you really got to look for it. It's like I said, it's more of the designer suggesting it. You're already a client of ours, and we rarely get a lead for landscape lighting only. There's plenty of folks out there that are in that market and that are looking for that. They're not finding us, but we're not looking for them either yet. So I think the way I imagine it is it gets to the point, if we do that, we have someone that specializes in landscape lighting that then handles those leads specifically. And same crews that do it now, I mean, we can install it. That's not a problem. We're very good at that. So I think that would be, just because the margins are pretty attractive on that, I think that's something that would, and irrigation. I have a good friend was in irrigation for a long time, built one of the most recognizable landscape or irrigation companies in our market. He has since sold his ownership share of the company, his half, I believe it was. And it used to me feel like it was a bit of a conflict of interest to do irrigation because of my friendship with him. He never said that, but I respected the guy. I'm like, well, I don't want to compete with my friends, even if there's enough work for all of us. But I feel like if someone were to walk in the door and say, hey, I've got 20 years of irrigation experience, and I'm tired of the rat race and doing this thing, and I'd love to. Again, I haven't been actively looking for that person, but if anyone's watching that wants to, is in the DC area or wants to be and knows irrigation, I feel like we could. Again, we have 4,000 active customers, so just think about this is without spending one marketing dollar. I mean, how many of those folks need or want irrigation? You know how many?
I don't know how many.
Quite a bit. We send irrigation leads to our same company, the friend that he's still involved in the company, he's just not an owner. And I mean, the amount of leads we send them, it's astronomical. and that's the only company we refer. We get nothing for it other than just knowing that they're in good hands with a quality company. So
Do they send you landscape maintenance leads?
I believe they do. I mean, I don't see them, and I'm not sure we can track that, but they do. I know they do. The irony is they just started doing aeration and overseeding as a way to keep their crews busy, which is one of our services. And when they did that before Joe was his name, before he left, he called me. He said, "Hey, I know we're going to be technically competing with you guys, but this is something that makes sense for us." I said, "Do your thing, Joe." So we've had some of our clients that have that company doing their aeration overseeding, which kind of bums me out, but that's okay.
In addition to irrigation and landscape lighting, what other services you potentially think about?
Yeah, so we have a home services division, and I know home services could cover a lot of bases, and it is somewhat ambiguous as to what is home services. Our definition of home services is, my original thought was handyman, but it's, handyman is kind of cheapens the sort of the perception of what it is you're receiving. Just a guy with a tool bag that just can do a little bit of everything. So it's a lot more than that. Painting, certainly handyman services. Gutter cleaning, actually, we do quite a bit of, and that's a nice add-on for us. But these are plans. One of the things that we do, I know we hadn't really talked about this, but none of this one-time stuff. I mean, for us, everything's recurring. So if you want gutter cleaning, or if you're interested in that, we may lose you as a prospective customer if you just need it done once. The answer is going to be, unfortunately, we can't do that. It's going to be a plan, and you're signing up for that plan. It's a minimum of 3 visits, and that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And, most people are okay with that. So gutter cleaning's been solid for us. It's a nice add-on. In regards to any other services, we do mosquito, flea, and tick. That's easy for us to do. It's a logical transition from, the grounds maintenance that we're doing. We just really, I think it would make sense for us to go in the house and really do full-blown pest. Again, I'm not comfortable with the level of knowledge and know-how and experience that we have in order to do that. And I think as soon as you set foot inside someone's house, things change potentially. There's a lot more liability, a lot more room for, hey, this my ring is missing or whatever, and we have a phenomenal staff, but I mean, it's a whole nother level of liability in my opinion, and so I really prefer not to cross the that threshold. Huh?
I like it. How did you get into flea or tick and mosquito? Was it customers said, "Hey, you guys do this," and you thought, "Well, we should," or?
I think it was actually my recollection is reading industry magazines boasting about profit margins on that particular type of service, and then starting to see larger companies like a True Green, for example, marketing out there that they're doing it. I'm thinking, why the heck aren't we doing this? We have lawn care technicians. They have all the licenses and credentials that they need in order to do this, and this makes perfect sense. So it was an easy add-on for us, as we use the same trucks, same spray rigs for the most part, and so that's been great. I think the market's pretty saturated now. Pretty much every landscape company that has a technician of some sort doing lawn care is offering similar services. So I'm not sure about growth potential necessarily, but again, we put virtually no marketing dollars into that. If we really wanted to go for it, I think we could, but I haven't. It's all current clients that are just sort of, they see it on the contract and they go, "Oh, I didn't know you guys do that. Cool. We'll do that too." So
you're not even really actively cross-selling it.
I'm not bragging. I'm just telling how it is.
I'm curious as to why you're not.
I haven't made it a priority. I mean, just in all candor. I'm not saying I don't want it to be a priority, but we do have a pretty healthy menu of services that we offer. One of the things that we were talking about unique, and we're a la carte. So we don't have like plan A, plan B, the gold plan, the silver plan. There's merit to that. I get that, but our maintenance services are more like a high-end steakhouse kind of. Maybe that's a bad analogy because it means expensive, but it's sort of like, okay, I came here for the steak, and these sides and this salad, those are all a la carte. If you want them, great, or you just order the steak and have a glass of water if you want. I mean, that's unusual, but sure. So that's kind of how we do it, and people can cancel at any time. We're not locking you into a term. It's open ended, but it also renews in perpetuity, which is kind of nice. So
Why have you gone that route? I mean, I think it's a great way to do it, a la carte. Everyone nowadays is into bundling, right?
yep.
And sometimes the problem, though, that I see with bundling is if somebody's got 3 services from you, and one of them they don't care about, or they're just like, why am I paying
Yeah.
for it? They'll just cancel everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or they didn't fully understand what it is they were signing up for, and then there's almost some animosity or some sort of resentment, like
They've
what?
been bamboozled.
Yeah, I didn't. That's not what I even signed up for, but you strong armed me into it. So I think, although I think there is benefit to bundling, because I think it does kind of reduce some confusion or anxiety from a client, like, wow, all of these choices and I don't know what to pick. And I get that. So we have to be cognizant of that. But I do, and we talked about this already, seeing things through the customer lens. It's really, really important to me, and I've made it really important for my staff to try and see things through the customer lens. And I think most customers like flexibility, they like choice, they like to be able to just sort of pick and choose what they want, and not feel forced to go with something just because that's what we offer. Now, we have a competitor, local business. He's a great guy. We're friends. And he made a decision a few years ago to go with, there's a minimum threshold. If you want to be a maintenance customer, this is the minimum threshold. We're not just going to mow your lawn, or we're not just going to, prune your shrubs a couple times a year. This is the minimum threshold. It was a bold move for him. And I think he's happy with that. I think it's limiting his upward mobility, his scalability a little bit, but I bet you their margins are pretty solid. So I don't like that as much, because I think, again, looking through the customer lens, I feel like it's sort of like, well, you're not good enough for us. Sorry, we have a minimum. You don't want to spend enough to be our customer. I don't know. I don't like that message that it sends. Even though we have a kind of a glossy, slick image, and we're pretty flexible and pretty reasonably priced when people get down to it, like, wow, you guys, it seem like you guys are going to be the most expensive, but you're right in there, and that's great. We're happy with that. And I think what we do, instead of trying to be the most expensive, we're making up, on the backside, being much more efficient for the route density we talked about, and that's our competitive advantage.
So when did you guys get Dan involved in your branding?
Yeah, Dan Antonelli, a super talented guy. This was before he had rebranded. It's currently Kick Charge.
Yeah.
It used to be Graphic Design.
It was horrible.
Which was horrible. It was.
I'm a partner in a business, and we used him back in 2016, I think, and it was Graphic Design. And I told Dan, I'm like, for your branding capabilities, this is absurd.
Yes. Yeah. Did not roll off the
No.
tongue. So, and they've experienced tremendous growth in the last few years, and I'm happy for him. He's a good guy, savvy marketing guy, and has assembled a great team around him, which, I think, I've done some similar things to where it makes him look good, but he's got a great, very capable team around him. So I reached out to Dan. It was at least 10 years ago. It might have been longer, maybe 12 years ago, before he really became sort of the larger marketing firm that they are now. And I realized at the time that our logo was kind of stale, and we had black trucks, and we had the black and tan as our color combo, which is somewhat unique already. But I just didn't feel like it had enough it didn't send enough of a message, and I wanted to freshen it up. The website was a piece of that. So he came back, and his team came back, which I thought was interesting at the time, and it seems obvious now, but at the time it didn't really occur to us. And he said, okay, so we used to have, so this is Mo, okay? Sort of like, I don't know, Elroy Jetson or Bob's Big Boy, similar kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
So,
I remember the Mexican commenting on it earlier today.
Right. So they came back and they said, hey, you've got this guy, he's like pushing a lawnmower, and he looks like he's all upset and, and getting his job done. He's really dialed in. It's very masculine. It's very, it doesn't speak to maybe the core clientele and so they asked us a lot of questions. We did a lot of research, and we found that a lot of decision makers as to who was well, let me walk it back. Prospective client that is looking for a landscape company or lawn care company, and how they're making that decision as to, hey, I'm going to click on this link, I'm going to fill out this form,
Yep.
and that might be 3 to 5 companies. What we found is many of those prospective clients are women, like more than men. So that already is, I mean, so we wanted to speak to prospective clients and soften up the image to where it's not this like big muscular guy that's like, yeah, we're mowing that grass. You know, it's like you see those
Not with
pest
the
trucks
six
out
pack
there.
and all that.
Yeah,
like,
right.
The
right.
women would like that.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And it's like very, you know, masculine, and we feel like, you know, cool that we're, you know, that's on the side of our truck. But so the idea of the flower, as simple as it may seem, and he's very friendly and happy, was to speak to our ladies that were interested, that were deciding, hey, I like Kingstowne, and they're, you know, and why they like Kingstowne. So that sounds very simple, but that was really the genesis of it. And he actually tried to talk me out of the black. He said it was the color of death, and ironically, he's rebranded, and now his colors are similar,
black and yellow, right? Yeah.
So, but he's not in the green industry. So, but I love Dan. That's not a shot at him, but I was adamant about sticking with the black, and that's our thing. So. It's a little more popular now than it used to be, but it used to be just green and white, you know, or some variation, obviously. So, for most companies.
When you know, you've really built something special there in the DC market, and after all these decades of toiling in the landscape vineyards, what's your day-to-day look like now for you?
Yeah, it has changed significantly.
I can imagine.
I'm almost embarrassed to admit. I, you know, like a lot of, you know, business owners that started from, you know, the very, very beginning and bootstrapped it. There are a lot of long days and long weeks and long years. I have 2 adult children now, 23 and 20-year-old daughters. Missed a lot of their, you know, growing up, quite frankly, putting in a lot of long hours over the years, and not really realizing that that's what was happening while it was happening. And then now looking back, it's like, man, I can't get that time back. So,
So you've decided to have more children. No, okay.
well, I'd have to reverse a certain procedure, but yeah.
All right.
Or it'd be the mailman. I don't know. But anyway, sorry, bad joke. So anyway, long story short, yeah, so I've put a lot more of an emphasis on quality of life now, even though I can't go back in time and get the, you know, those adolescent years back from my daughters and all. But I work mostly from home now. I have a home office with an awesome view of, you know, the beautiful landscape. I know a good landscaper in town, so and probably about 25, 30 hours a week or so, mostly from my home office. I'm not bragging. You asked the question, and I think I'm dangerously close to being maybe not as involved as I should be. I'm very involved, and everyone knows I'm involved, but I mean physically present, because there is, in many cases, I think the perception is reality. And I mean staff, like, you know, boots on the ground production staff, if they haven't seen me for weeks, which is not uncommon, I think sometimes their mind can run wild a little bit and say, well, is he still involved in the business? Is he still here? Is he sick? I mean, you know, so I have to be cognizant of that, and just, you know, occasionally I'll just show up on a job site completely unannounced, and it's like, hey, you know, and everybody's super happy. I'm not trying to find anything wrong with the quality of the work. I'm just there to be present, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes. So I've been doing a little bit more of that, because I think I actually probably backed off a little too much. And that's a testimonial to my team. I mean, I have a phenomenal team where if I'm not there for weeks on end, I wouldn't say nobody notices, but it's okay. I'm not answering 3 cell phones and putting out fires and meeting with angry clients. Used to do that, did that a lot, but have a phenomenal team now that can handle that. And they prefer I not get involved, because, you know, sometimes it might make them uncomfortable when I get involved. So I think it's kind of a, you know, it's a mutually beneficial business relationship now with the team. So
I guess in closing, I wanted to ask you, you know, how did you learn these skills to recruit, attract, manage these great teams?
Yeah, you know, it's all been on the job. As I mentioned, I left college early and was never a great student to begin with. I don't have any, you know, MBA or fancy degrees. What I would say is that this is going to sound corny, but really, really strong family ties, and lots of love, affection, and support from my mother, my grandparents growing up, and lots of authenticity, very open, genuine relationship, right, with my mother and her parents growing up. Again, this is looking way back, right? I didn't know it at the time. That's just normal. So and that's the way I grew up, being that person, being, genuine, authentic, maybe sometimes a little too open, a little too candid, and then realizing, okay, maybe that's a little more than people really want to hear or want to know. But I think, again, I'm not saying this was a plan. It's just this is the way it's happened. I hope that most of my staff feel similar, even though it's a business relationship, but that they have that sort of relationship with me where we're just open and honest with each other. I appreciate them. I respect them. I'm genuine. I'm authentic because that's the way I am, or at least aspire to be as much as I can. I'm not perfect, but and I think that more than anything it has been the key to building a phenomenal team. But you either have that or you don't. I agree. You can work on it. You can improve it. But if you're not that person, that doesn't mean you can't run a great business, but you probably want to have someone else out front that is that person and just keep them really happy and empower them, and then be behind the scenes. If you're the numbers guy, crunch the numbers, and that's okay. But thankfully that's the way I was raised, and so it's resonated with my staff and my team, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate you joining me today.
I appreciate you listening to all my diatribes.
Absolutely. Great stories.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Krisjan.
Absolutely. Likewise.